All right, I would love to introduce you to our very next speaker, Megan Brown, the Director of Knowledge Management and Data Literacy at Starbucks. Today, Megan is going to talk to us about data literacy, the missing link. Megan Brown is an educator, researcher, and data scientist who now leads the knowledge management and data literacy team within analytics and insights at Starbucks. Megan is also an Aspen Institute First Movers Fellow. They enjoy pursuing solutions to challenging problems in a variety of domains, including but not limited to making work better, literacy development, making and breaking model predictions, and shifting organizational cultures for the better. Megan and their spouse have 2 children, ages 2 and 4. In their limited free time, they dance, read, and write. Welcome to the stage, Megan. All right, Megan, hello. And while you unmute yourself, this is Starbucks coffee. It was made in a Keurig, but it is Starbucks coffee. So cheers. There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to let you take it away. I'll be back in about 10 minutes for some questions.
Awesome. So I am that weird data scientist that's going to take us all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is people. So if people make data and processes store data and tech is how we use data, we were just talking about processes for accessing data in a reasonable way, well-governed, controlled. Dave did a great job. I'm going to take us all the way back to people, because people is often how data are used to make decisions and to drive strategy for an organization. So data literacy is the missing link to driving business value from the massive investments many of our organizations have made in data and analytics. Data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with data in context. So humor me for a couple of minutes. I'm going to go into a little bit of an extended metaphor to show why data literacy is so important. So imagine you're standing next to a very long, very tall fence. On your side of the fence, you have data engineers, analysts, data scientists, decision scientists, statisticians, ML engineers, just about everyone you would need to have a killer analytics and insights function. On the other side of the fence are your business leaders and your non-quant business friends. So this might include marketers or operators, maybe human resources, to name a few. Now that tall fence causes a couple of problems. The first problem is, when someone needs some analytics, how do they ask for it? Are they shouting over the fence? And you can kind of hear a word every third word or so. Maybe they toss a ball of paper, a ticket, over the fence, and it has 5 cryptic sentences on it, none of which include a metric or an analysis. How many times are you going to have to shout back and forth over that fence to gather their requirements and really get at the heart of what they're looking for? You know, you could fix it by drilling holes in the fence one at a time. So building that individual relationship with someone where you can speak very clearly in your language and they speak very clearly in your language. Maybe we could toss a form over the fence so we get more than 5 sentences and they fill it out and toss it back. Maybe we find some people with louder voices and better enunciation so that they can shout a little more clearly over the fence, and maybe the folks on the other side do the same. There's another problem. When someone on your side of the fence creates a new data product, let's, for this example, say it's a dashboard. How does it get over the fence? Are they shouting incoming and then just lobbing it over, hoping someone catches it? Maybe you have a really intrepid data analyst and they're going to scale that fence and get to the top and gingerly lower that dashboard down right into the hands of the person who asked for it. Maybe you've got someone with some circus skills, they've got some jumping stilts, and they spend all of their time leaping back and forth over the fence, bringing data products in one direction and new requirements in the other direction. If you're tossing, climbing, or jumping, how can you tell if the insights were actually used to drive business decisions and drive value? What is the adoption like beyond that one person who catches that new data product? Is it the role of the catcher to encourage usage? Is it the role of the analyst to encourage usage? One way to think about this is a new dashboard is a change. Do you do any change management on the other side of it? Or do you just launch it once and let it go into the ether? So we could, on both sides of the fence, decide to shorten that fence by skilling up people in terms of reading, working with, analyzing, and communicating with data in context. So none of us should be surprised that data scientists don't always have the business context. So that's why we've talked for years about storytelling, and storytelling kind of being the last mile in analytics delivery. We've also talked about how can we develop data acumen within our data scientists and our analysts so that their narratives line up with the business. And it's much more persuasive when we hand off something to the business. They'll be more likely to use it because it already fits within what they already know. We still have a long way to go. There's still data scientists who don't really see the value in that, but we do have to keep going. Effectively, this means that data folks will have to speak more business language. The business side of the fence now has a great deal of business context, right? They're out there every day driving the business forward, making marketing decisions, making decisions about inventory, how to run a store, how to staff a store. They might actually need support with reading, working with, analyzing, and communicating with data. So this includes everything from basic statistics, right? Like, what should you know around a point estimate? When someone gives you an average, what else do you need to know to understand that distribution so that you're not making a horrible decision based on like everyone does this one number? How do you tell if your data are from trusted sources? So this is the user end of governance, right? How do you know if your data are from the right source, your metrics are calculated in the right way, and that your general source is a reliable source maintained and updated routinely? Finally, they'll need access to some knowledge management tools. And knowledge management is really deep down very exciting. Knowledge management is how people find the things that your analytics and data teams have created. If they can't find it, it basically doesn't exist to them. If it takes them longer than 30 minutes to find something that they need to make a decision, they'll make a decision without it. So that knowledge management is very, very important. They'll also need practice weaving data into their existing business narratives. And that's something that you can learn over time. It's not something you take a 30-minute or an hour workshop and suddenly are super great at. It's something that you practice. I'm sure that each of us has a set of wonderful stakeholders with whom we've already built that relationship. They speak a little data, we speak a little business, and it just works really, really well. Maybe we've worked with them for years and we've built that relationship, no problem. Maybe they started out as an analyst and they secretly have some quant skills as a marketer. We can do better. We can make more of those relationships with a little bit of intentionality about it. So I'm going to start referring to the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom hierarchy. I'm sure you've seen it before. There's thousands of iterations of it out there in the world. Has your business information become business knowledge? To move from information to knowledge in that hierarchy, there has to be a solid handoff of information from the analytics teams, and the business teams have to use it to create knowledge. That handoff can only happen well if we shorten that fence. So data teams have to speak a little business, and business teams have to speak a little data just for that handoff. Without the fence in the way, both sides work together to build business wisdom. Now that's the part of the hierarchy we basically never talk about. It's not a technical process, building business wisdom. It's actually a matter of people having habits to use data to make decisions and choose their strategy going forward. It's people working together to make the best decisions for their organization. Now that handoff is key. They have to share a language in the moment so that when we present relevant, intuitive tools to our stakeholders, we show that it's trusted and we show when and how it should be used. And we also talk about the value it's expected to drive. Why did we invest in creating that tool? Then our business folks can become skilled users of that tool. They can become advocates for that tool within their organization. And they can start to set the expectation that insights from that dashboard, for example, are used to make decisions. They're one of the inputs that's necessary to make the right decision for the business. So as data teams, we enable our friends in the business to habitually use data and analytics to make business decisions that drive profit or increase savings. In order to do that, we need storytelling on the data side, business acumen. And on the business side, we need data literacy. They need to be ready to catch that dashboard and then be able to talk about it with other people so that it starts being embedded in business decisions. Thanks.
And thank you so much, Megan. I absolutely love that you told us a story. I was visualizing this the entire time, the people at the fence, the drilling the holes. You're a great storyteller, so I really appreciate that. We have a lot of questions that came in on data literacy, and I'm just going to go ahead and take as many as we can in the time allotted here. We'll start with Yuri, whose question is, what are the first steps that I should take if I would like to launch a data literacy program at my company?
Sure. So one of the first things we did was we started to study the needs of the business folks, right? Mm-hmm. How many of them were starting from scratch? How many of them had enough information to be dangerous, but didn't quite have it organized yet? And how many of them were really fine, right? Yeah. So first, we created some personas. We made sure they were based in reality, and we used those personas to create targeted classes or targeted learning opportunities. Not everything's a class. We work really hard to make sure, so we have our sort of entry level starting from scratch persona. We call it the patron. We work really hard to make sure that courses or learning opportunities for that person are super engaging, relatively high level, but get them interested in what analytics or machine learning could do for them. I'd also say there are a number of great books out there on individual data literacy that you could rely on to set up some of those learning opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Question here from Zold, who's asking, how do you deal with all the biases that influence people, even if they claim to have data literacy?
Oh, man. I mean, the biggest bias that we have to deal with is sort of this adult assumption that we know everything that we know. Like we actually have much more limited knowledge than we give ourselves credit for. So those biases show up everywhere. The first one you have to break is that one, where you have to have people admit to themselves that they might not really have all of the aspects of data literacy. But then I think there really is something about being critical with statistics and seeing the whole range. So that when people's gut instincts or experience tell them this will work, you can have them see that distribution over time and see if it's going in the other direction. So, use good data to challenge their assumptions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. John is asking, if data is a digital representation of business knowledge, is business vocabulary a good entry point for data literacy?
It is if you all agree on the business vocabulary. It's a whole separate problem coming to agreement. What I will say is yes, because fundamentally that becomes what people search for. So those metrics definitions and those business terms are how people actually talk about data who aren't building the data themselves. So you do have to come to agreement, and then that does become the foundational search for everything else.
Okay, yeah, I love this question from Hermand. How do you describe data literacy in one word?
Oh my gosh. So I'm going to not do that. I'm going to do 2 different definitions. So knowledge management is, can you find what we've made? And data literacy is, can you use what we've made?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I'd love the audience to try and go ahead and define data literacy with one word. I'd love to hear from others. How would you describe it, right?
Honestly, if you come up with data literacy in one word, like put it in the chat.
Yeah.
We'll use it forever.
There's one word here. Bueno, there you go. And we'll take one last question, mainly due to time. Let's see. Fernando is asking, what data literacy books do you recommend? I know you mentioned books earlier.
Yeah, so I am blanking on most of them, but the most user-friendly that I have read in the last year or so was by Ben Taylor. He runs a group out of Seattle, and I think he's just published his 4th or 5th book. It's very user-friendly, non-jargony, and pretty entertaining for a data literacy book. Some of them can be dry.
We'll have to check that one out. So thank you so much. And Megan, if you have time to jump in on LinkedIn and answer some questions, we've got plenty coming on there from data literacy to questions on caffeine affecting data literacy, Starbucks jokes there. But thank you so much for your time with us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.